Well, we know that Dr. Ben Chavis is a living legend and a treasure, and we were honored and grateful for his service, his continued service for the fight for democracy. But this morning, I want to welcome you to our second year of Coffee and Conversations, where we highlight Black leaders in our state. And today, we're actually welcoming Kristi Jones, who is Chief of Staff for Governor Roy Cooper. Now, Kristi is a proud native of Wilson, North Carolina. She knows it was her family and her community that made a difference for her and put her on her path and her journey. Like many of us, it was those Sunday school teachers and the public school teachers that, and those mentors that really wrap their arms around us that makes a difference. And the same is true for Kristi. And she made it to the illustrious North Carolina Central University for her Bachelor of Arts in Public and Political Science, and then off to University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, where she earned her law degree and started her career shortly thereafter at the OIC, the Opportunities Industrialization, I'll get that right, that center in Wilson, North Carolina, which is a nonprofit that continues to provide opportunities for members of the community. So she appreciates the role of nonprofits and understands the role that they play in our community. She then worked for Governor Hunt as the executive director of the North Carolina Initiative on Race, which was an innovation to make sure that the goal of improving race relations was cared for and fostered collaborative relationships between business and community leaders. In 2001, she joined Roy Cooper, who was then the state's attorney general, and later became his chief of staff, in addition to helping Governor Cooper, then Attorney General Cooper, accomplish his mission at fighting crime and protecting North Carolina consumers. She was responsible for the oversight of the agency, administering and including personnel and budgets, as well as the general operations. But we know that in 2017, she became the first Black woman to be a chief of staff for any governor in the state's history. And that's an important role. We all are proud of the role that she plays in her leadership. But Kristi is also that humble leader that we've all come to know and appreciate. So Kristi, welcome.
Thank you, Courtney. You forgot to say the most important thing, that I'm your friend.
Of course. I think people will be able to tell. They know the relationship and the friendship.
Well, thank you for having me. I want to thank the Black Alliance for doing this. The work matters. It is good. I am a product of the Black Alliance. A lot of my leadership style, skill, I was taught through members of the Alliance. So appreciate everybody joining in this morning. Excited to be here. I also want to take a minute to thank you all for honoring my hero, my leader, my mentor, Carolyn Q. Coleman. I know that will happen later today, and grateful for that. Everything that I am, I owe to who I called her Dr. Coleman. And so grateful and glad to be here and looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah, and that's what it is. I mean, it's really a conversation because, our relationship and the things we've been able to accomplish and work together over the years. But I think it's important for the Alliance and our leadership and our partners to understand the role that you're in. And I think we often talk about the Black Alliance because we know the legacy and the history of the Alliance is really as an association of associations of Black elected officials. But the important role of public administrators, that translation of the politics or the issues into policy and then into governance. Maybe you can talk a little bit about your role and sort of how you see the leadership of what it means to be a chief of staff and what that opportunity has been.
So first, let me also acknowledge Ron Penny, who taught many of us. I had the opportunity to work with Mr. Penny over at Central at the School of Public Administration. What I like to tell people is a public policy is just an idea until it's implemented. And I believe that it's the chief of staffs, the city managers, the county managers those folks who help take this great, wonderful idea that we have collectively come in and implement it into the agencies and the organizations that we want to make those change. And so I think that is where the rubber hits the road. Like we all come together and we know where we want to go, but getting it done, following it through, like it is not just, oh, somebody says we want this public policy to happen, and it doesn't just magically happen. It is those public administrators who say, how do we make that happen? How do we follow through? Because then it's going to drop off somebody else's radar screen, and you've got to go back and say, hey, this is still not done. So I like to call us the finishers, if you will, the implementers, just getting it done. That's what's most important. I think as a chief of staff, city manager, county manager, execution should be your strong power. And that's kind of what we do. And that's the role that I see us. And it's a very critical role because, again, a public policy is just an idea until it's implemented.
That's right. And I mean, and we think about that from an advocacy perspective because we have those moments, those ideas when we're in community and we're working alongside our organizers, and we are hearing about those things, but it's about making that idea translate. And so, and you touched on something about being the finisher and that being the superpower. I would say for you, one of your superpowers is quite frankly leadership. It's about making sure that we know there's something to be done. We've heard it. It's a priority. Now we've got to make it happen. So can you just talk about what your philosophy or style of leadership might be? I think it's, again, different than what the role of an elected official, the appointed leadership.
So I'll go ahead and say, some may call me the velvet hammer in that kind of way. So I'll go ahead and tell you that's what you might hear about me. But I do see my role as the finisher. I had the great opportunity to grow up under the Ben Ruffins, the Carolyn Colemans, Everett Ward, so many great leaders. I sat at their right side. Andrea Harris sat at their right side and listened and learned. And I think that's the greatest thing a leader can do is listen and learn. But at the same time, I learned from the young gurus, the Courtney Crowders, Marcus, so many young leaders as well, and just kind of taking it all in and learning from everyone else and then kind of applying that to get it done. As a leader, I think you know where you want to go and you got to take people and get it done and kind of navigate, try to be behind the scenes, I normally wouldn't do this, even this, but you asked me, but try to be behind the scenes because I feel like my role is kind of getting it done. And as a leader, you don't have to always be out front. You can be behind the scenes, getting it done, making sure things happen. And so, it's just a unique style. Like I said, I've been blessed with a lot of mentors. A lot of people poured into me to get this. They didn't pour into just Kristi. They made it so a lot of us would have this opportunity. It was just my time to be here. So grateful for that and glad to get it done.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of it is that leadership behind the scenes and just keeping up with things, and also, and you mentioned it. I mean, being in a relationship with the people in community, right? And we heard that in your bio. That what community means.
Right. Well, Carolyn and many others used to talk about inside and outside. Mm-hmm. The outside are the advocates, that the organizations, the community that tells us what needs to be done. And then there's those of us on the inside that are in these places to get it done. And always making sure that the inside and the outside work together for the common good. And that's what it's about. So I can't really do my job if I don't know what my community needs, right? Like I can't be effective. That's why I'm here. And so I have to stay in connection with the community organizations, advocates, everything. We're together. And we just have different roles. We each have to respect the other one's role. Right. It's where you come from, you're pushing me, and I'm on the inside telling you how we're going to get it done. And it's just us kind of pushing and pulling to kind of get together. I always say this, though. It always starts with electing the right person. right? Because you're not going to get the right chief of staff. You're not going to get the
That's
right county manager. You're not going to get the right city manager,
That's right.
the right kind of implementers if you don't have the right elected official. And I say that because we're at the beginning of primary season. We have a lot of big elections ahead of us. And so let me just remind everybody that the key is electing the right people, and then they will put in place
That's
the
right.
people, the right implementers to help you get it done.
Yeah, I mean, it's the, and we talk about the work that we do at the Alliance in a lot of different ways.
Mhm.
Me, I can come up with an analogy,
Right.
every day of the week. But it is, but we talk about operating systems, almost
Right.
like we talk about, our phones or the devices that we use, and, that being the platform, to bring these issues together with the advocates, with the administrators, with
Right.
the elected officials, and everyone in relationship with each other to get it done. I mean, and you were touching on it. So those organizations, those individuals that are most effective in working with you, I mean, what did they do? What is from a communication style or just?
So I'm going to tell you who probably was one of the most effective advocates, and that's Andrea Harris.
Yeah,
right?
That's right.
Because what she knew to do was not come in and tell somebody how to do their job, the elected official how to do their job. She would come in and say, this is where we want to be.
Right.
Help us get there. Right.
Right.
And she would say, here are 10 different ways. Here's the impact that it would have. Like it would be like, let's have this conversation. She would help you understand what the problem is, what the solution should be, and give you 5 different options to go, and then kind of leave you to check in back again and say, she was going to check in and come back and say, hey, you forgot this, how you doing? So I think it's that advocate who is willing to work with you,
Right.
like, again, I appreciate advocacy, grew up in advocacy, and still consider myself an advocate. But we have to work together and kind of push and pull. Everything is a push and pull. And so we have to kind of work together. And so I would say now she was probably the most effective role model as an advocate, because she got so much done like that, right? You think about everything she was able to accomplish and how she was able to get it done through different administrations. It didn't matter if a Republican, Democrat, this, that, the other, she could get it done. And that's because she didn't come in there and telling you this is what you need to do, how you need to do it. She would come and say, look here, how are we going to get to where we want to be?
Look, now, you talk about being a velvet. That was the velvet hammer.
I don't know if she had a lot of velvet on the hammer, but yes.
It was a hammer nonetheless.
It was a hammer nonetheless. But like, look, we're all living like, one of the greatest things was for me was after the murder of George Floyd, and we were looking and seeing how North Carolina could grow, that we knew we were going to put some task force together, but to put her name to that task force.
That's right.
Just touched my heart. And so many people were ready to join it because it had her name, her legacy was attached to that task force. So still today, beyond her life, her legacy is still telling us what to do. It is still driving us to the right place.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, the Black Alliance and the relationship to advocacy and, elected officials, administrators, all of those who touch on those issues, the way that they play out in our communities, the priorities, the commitments that we have as an organization, all of it, when we have those moments and those people like Andrea Harris that help make it plain for us, it's nothing like it.
I also want to thank the Alliance for, being that conduit of information. Information is power. And a lot of information goes on in a lot of different circles. And those circles don't always get to our communities. But I feel like the Black Alliance is our conduit. I know in our office, I always say, make sure the Alliance knows what we're doing, because I know if the Alliance knows, our communities know. So really appreciate, I think that is, how you can continue to be most helpful. North Carolina is in a wonderful place, right? Like, thank goodness we got through the pandemic. Was very proud of Governor Cooper's leadership. We were unique, particularly in the South, that we came out and CDC put out a study that basically said we had the least amount of deaths per capita and the least amount of job losses per capita. So we struck just the right balance, but we were worried about how all communities would come out. And North Carolina is lucky, right? A lot of federal funds are coming through, and it is now where we need the alliance more than ever to make sure that these federal funds and these activities and these great changes make it to all parts of North Carolina, all communities. And so really appreciate and look forward as we grow, like as our economy grows, that all of North Carolina grows.
That's right. Well, listen, on behalf of the Black Alliance, I receive that, and I know the Alliance receives it. Our board, chaired by Senator Valerie Foushee, so much of the work that happens, Marcus Bass, Dion Lester, LA, Lamisha, so many. I want to start calling names because the team is really about getting the work done and doing it in a way that's collaborative. I think we all recognize that the pandemic impacts hit many of our communities, harder. I mean, the impacts are uneven, but always felt like there was an opportunity and a partnership with Governor Cooper, with you and the team, to make sure that we could get that information flowing.
Well, I'm a very spiritual person, and I believed God put that team together for just that moment, right? Like, when Governor Cooper was elected, appointed me, but then took it to the next level and created the most diverse cabinet in history. We were preparing for the pandemic then, right? So that when the pandemic hit, we weren't then trying to get communities engaged. We had already engaged these communities. And I think that was really important. And all of us understanding that it was going to take all of us working together, the alliance, all elected officials kind of rowing in the same direction to get us all through it. We learned a lot of lessons through the pandemic, a lot of lessons. Continuing to. I think we learned how important community relationships are. Right? Like some states that didn't have those relationships. I think about Ben Money, who had just come into state government at that time, and the relationships that he had with health equity leaders across the state, and how that helped us to ensure that all parts of the pandemic were done fairly. North Carolina, we were proud. When we started giving out the vaccine, we decided that we would do a really good analysis and look at the demographics of who got the vaccine. Now, some were like, well, if you do that, you're going to show it didn't reach all parts of the community. But you got to see what you need to know. You have to see what you need to know. And so we stopped right there and did it. And then that kind of helped us. So we're learning now, that has taught us that a crisis, the solution to a crisis can't start in the middle of a crisis. Every day you're working to prepare for another crisis. And that's kind of where we were. And I was grateful for that. And Alliance was really helpful in that.
Well, it's, you talk about preparing for crisis. I feel like, and look, I've said it to you, I've said it to other members of the team. And there will be many legacies of the Cooper administration. Some planned and some unplanned. One of the unplanned legacies is the fact that it has been a steady disaster response. When the administration first took office, hurricane, flooding, another hurricane, more flooding, earthquakes, landslides, storms, those things, and then of course, the global pandemic. So we have been in a perpetual state of response. And so that information flow that you talked about, it's so key. The unplanned issues.
Right.
But in terms of those planned issues, the things that you're championing, the things that you're excited about, one thing comes to mind.
What's left?
But we think about, for instance, Medicaid expansion. We think about Medicaid expansion and some of those issues. Can you talk about where and how you see those issues that we're now planning for?
Yeah, obviously North Carolina has got to expand Medicaid. Anyone who's listening, anything you can do, help us get this done. This one matters, right? Having affordable healthcare matters. And we never have seen it like we saw it in the pandemic. I was talking to others the other day. The one lesson that we should learn from the pandemic is, before the pandemic, people other people's health was their business. It didn't impact us.
Right.
But the pandemic taught us, if we don't get them the vaccine, that impacts my life. Their health impacts my life. And I hope that we take that out of there. And I hope that we see that we have got to get Medicaid expanded. That is the number one goal that is still on the table. We're going to work really hard this session. LT McCrimmon, our outstanding legislative director, tells me she is going to get this done. We have to, right? We have to get that done. So that will be one of the things. Obviously, Governor Cooper thinks about clean energy. I think one of the things that we continue to focus on is, we have, after George Floyd's murder, had great task force to come together. I mentioned the Andre Harris task force. I mentioned the trek around racial equity that Justice Earls and General Stein lead. They have put together a good plan for us to be the North Carolina, the equitable, just North Carolina we want to have. And so one of the things that our team is doing is getting those recommendations implemented.
That's right.
Right. Again,
that's right.
It's nothing
That's
until
right.
it's implemented.
That's right.
We have learned that a lot of policies have indirect and direct negative impacts and disparate impacts on our communities, right? And that's been systemic, years in the making, right? We have to have systemic change that goes in the, so it has to be entrenched. These changes have to be entrenched. And so Governor Cooper has challenged our team to make some of these changes. Want to be very intentional around minority spending, minority hub spending, I guess we'll call it, historically underutilized businesses, and making sure that the wealth that's coming into North Carolina is felt everywhere. Tammy Hall and Tanya Smith in the DOT, both of them are doing a tremendous job. Jobs and opportunities are coming from everywhere. How do we make sure it hits all communities? Governor Cooper, when he was first elected and in his inaugural speech, he talked about a North Carolina for all. And it matters that when we're rising, that all of these communities rise as well. Everything is touched. And so I'm going to spend the rest of this administration making sure that we implement these change, we put them in there so that they last forever, systemic change. So I hope his legacy will be having really reviewed government and put some changes into place that have a positive impact forever in North Carolina.
Well, I mean, that's, and under normal circumstances, a goal that ambitious, people would say, oh yeah, but we actually know, given the work that has already occurred and the opportunity and we have used that word opportunity already probably 50 times since we've started talking.
Well, when we have somebody like Michelle Sanders, right? Secretary Michelle Sanders, very proud of. She is one of my heroes, leading the Department of Commerce that is leading the economic development. With every company that her team talks to, what are they going to talk about? Equity and inclusion.
Absolutely.
Right? All communities, all of North Carolina. So, I, again, so grateful that Governor Cooper put this team in place, this diverse team, because they're at the table. Right. They're making the decisions. They're having the conversations. They're leading the conversations. And so that is the first start to making sure that it happens throughout North Carolina for North Carolina for all. So very proud of all of the team members. Secretary Penny, it's about to be a new recovery program that goes out that will help barbers and cosmetologists. There were a lot of relief efforts around some other professions before, but a lot of our community was left out. And so went back to the General Assembly, went back to the drawing board. I think that starts next week. So being very mindful to be inclusive. And as you think about these opportunities, how do you make sure everybody gets it? Every lawn care, every service that we traditionally, the businesses that we own.
Well, it's exciting to know, and having had the opportunity as the Alliance and the advocates and the organizations that we're connected to be a part of the imagining of those types of solutions, is exciting to see when it is able to actually come to life. Now, we talk about that, and I guess this might be more of a philosophical, as I spill my papers. This might be even more of a philosophical question about seeing those problems identified, solutions identified. Presuming we've got the right elected officials in place. they've hired and appointed the right leadership to help see those community issues translate into actual policies that then become part of the governance
Mhm.
of the state. But sometimes when we're talking with our advocacy partners, there might be some frustration or disappointment if they ask for 10, but in the negotiation of what we can actually have happen, we have to move forward with, let's say, 6. Just
Right.
as an analogy, so we don't get the 100%, but we get the 60%. I mean, I recognize that as progress. How do you see that? Or maybe what's the advice for our advocates that sometimes see the 60% and still feel the frustration of?
First of all, I empathize with the frustration, right? Like there's sometimes those of us on the inside that want the 100% as well. They might have to deal with the legislator and couldn't get the 100%, right? Like
Sure.
it may not be the people, we may have the same goal of the 100%. So we understand the frustration. What I think I would say is, first of all, acknowledge the win for the 60%.
That's right.
Right. And one of the things, and we do this, I do this, we're always wanting more. And I think we should, but you got to celebrate what you have accomplished. And North Carolina advocacy groups, the reason North Carolina is where it is because of North Carolina advocacy groups, right?
That's right.
The NAACPs, the Alliance, all of these wonderful groups historically have been involved and pushed North Carolina to be a beacon in the South. North Carolina wouldn't have been a beacon in the South. It would have been the South had it not been for these organizations. Let's just call it what it is, right?
That's right.
And so again, understanding the inside outside role. And so I would say to the advocates, keep pushing for the 100%, right?
That's right.
We're going to get there, but I don't want you to feel like you were less, didn't accomplish what you want because you just got the 60. You
That's
got
right.
the 60
That's
and
right.
just tell them you're going to come back again.
That's right.
Right? You're just going to, it's the next play, right?
That's right.
You only scored a field goal this time. Next time you coming back for the touchdown, right? And so know that and understand that. And, express, also, I will say, express to the people on the inside, I appreciate you helping me get the 60%.
That's right.
Let's just kind of say that. Let me say that, acknowledge, right? Because sometimes you don't get that. You're just like, Kristi, what happened to my 40%? I was like, look, you got 60. So that kind of thing.
That's right.
And so understanding that, let's just all celebrate in what we have, but keep working together to get to where we want to be.
That's
and
right.
Again, change a lot of times in anything is incremental stages, right?
That's right.
Like there's not a lot of change that in a good sense that happens overnight, right?
That's
It's
right.
all kind of incremental. And so let's just continue to work together to get to that 100%.
Yeah, I think I don't advise people, on to be more patient.
Mm.
I usually advise people to be more persistent.
Be more persistent.
We're not asking for patience. We want the urgency,
right?
That relentlessness towards that 40%.
Right.
But let's be persistent. That allows us to continue to be creative and quite frankly, stay in good spirits and in good relationship with one another while we do this hard work.
We know Mr. Strategy is going to go while we're getting to 60. He's already got a new strategy to go back and get that other 40. And that's what it takes, right? Because you might need a new strategy for the last 40. The strategy for the first 60 could be different from the strategy for the last 40. And so always recalibrating. I always say, the lady that gives you direction, you make a wrong turn, she just says redirect.
That's
right. She doesn't say stop, you're lost. She says redirect. And so basically that's what this is about, is at some point you just get to where you are and you just redirect. And that's where you get it. And so, yeah, I agree. We've had a lot of patience. We don't need any more patience.
That's right.
Right. Persistence is where we need to be.
The persistence is where we need to be. I mean, I think it's one of the reasons I was excited for this conversation today is not just because I'm with one of my best friends, but because, of the role and the perspective and what you mean to the advocacy community and what you mean from a policy perspective. So I don't want to end this conversation without, saying thank you on behalf of all of the organizations and the advocates, the elected officials, the people that are in these communities, Kristi, people recognize the role that you play.
Well, it's not me in this role, it's us in this role,
Sure.
right? It is us. Like, I came from OIC, then remember the NAACP. I am us, right? This role is us. And so it's all of us working together. It is not Kristi Jones in this role. It's Donna Harbor in this role. It's Carolyn Coleman. It's Sonia Barnes. It is all of us in this role. So it's just my name, but it is all of us sitting in this seat. And it's been in a making in the long time. And it just happens to be my name. But again, being the first isn't as great as being, one of 10, right? So we need to be looking for who's the next chief of staff, who's the first Black governor. We need to be looking at what's next, not the patience, but the persistence, right?
That's right.
So what's next? And so I do appreciate people and being gracious to me, but it is not about me.
Yeah.
It is so not about me. It is about where we are going. And just the fact that I have a incremental role in all of this, just for a minute, is grateful. I do always acknowledge Roy Cooper because there were a lot of other governors who had the opportunity to do what he did and they didn't. And I do acknowledge that. I've been with him 22 years, and it has been a journey. And way back when he was in the Department of Justice, after his first 4 years, he made me chief of staff then, and he didn't have to do it. It was unheard of, right? And nobody would have said anything to him if he had not, including me. Right. And so it is that balance. So I always give him that credit, but it is all of us understanding and taking advantage. It's you, Courtney, for understanding kind of where I sit and talking to me on Saturdays and Sundays and saying, Kristi, don't give up, keep going. We've got to do this and think about it like this and remember this and all of this. So it is everybody supporting me up. Again, I'm the face, my name is there, but it is everybody pouring into me to get this done. And that's why, I am as excited about what we still can do as I am about what we have done. And I feel that sense of urgency,
absolutely,
get it done. And, we have Governor Cooper calls us cabinet staff together and says, listen, the urgency is now, make this happen. And we have the team in place. We have the wonderful advocates, the alliance, everybody working together. North Carolina's got to be what we make it.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
Right? We've got to make it right for Amaya. We got to make it right for our kids. We've got to do this. And now is our opportunity. So, let's don't say, oh, yay, we got it done. Mission accomplished. No, let's go get it.
That's right.
Go get it.
Absolutely.
Go get it. And that's kind of where we are. Understand you had the wonderful my forever Chief Justice Beasley this morning. And so go get it done.
Well, right. I mean, and that's so, that is so perfectly and well said. The issues that we, really form the commitment statements of the Alliance. Those are, I will say in the 20 years where our 16th summit, we're talking 2 decades of the Alliance, several iterations of board and elected leaders, appointed leadership, community leaders, organizing. We talked about operating system earlier, right? And the ties that bind are those commitments,
right?
To see progress in the midst of it all.
Yeah, because as proud as we all were when she was appointed, when Governor Cooper appointed her as the first Black female Chief Justice of the North Carolina Supreme Court, how devastated we were when we lost that, right?
Yeah. Which
shows us one act can't sustain us, right? It has to be a constant, persistent effort. We can get to where we want to be, but if we don't keep it up, it doesn't matter.
That's
right. We go back to where we were.
That's exactly
right. And so she is our classic example of getting where we want to be, but using the same energy to get there, to get to the next level. I hope we all just kind of pour into her and what we have going on.
Well, I think that is a fantastic word to end on, because we know it's opportunity. I'm going over my word map for this conversation. Opportunity, persistence, sharing, holding up one another, you know, just being committed. And you know what, Kristi, honestly, that's you've always been those things. And thank you for being here this morning for our coffee conversation. I think our coffee might be cold. There's
cold.
actual coffee.
Actual coffee. So Courtney, I do again thank you, but I also want to take this opportunity to thank Brad Thompson.
Absolutely.
Right, Brad, thank you. Thank you for just calling and checking on me. You are loved. And to tell Zell Lucas, who used to be our DJ for the Alliance, we miss dancing. And I look forward to us being together in person. I look forward to hugs. Thank you all. Enjoy your day. Let's go get this done.
Absolutely, and we will. And as we move to the next segment that we have, we know that we're actually going to have several breakout sessions. And so we want to make sure that we are, that you all hang on for those sessions that are coming up. And then we'll join back in and connect shortly thereafter.